highly rate. So Dalton, like, I love you, and this is no offense to you. Do you ever get comments, questions about you being coached by someone that's never competed?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah. Okay. So again, I know Dalton, like, so it's like, yeah. I know that what he's capable of, and, you know, I have no doubt that he's like the best person for the job for you. There's no question, like, at all. But how do you answer that question when people that don't know Dalton, you know, come to you and say, hey, like, if you had your choice between like Dalton and Dorian Yates, which, you know, you could pretty much apply to be coached by, you know, like, why Dalton? Like, why a coach that hasn't done that before, like, hasn't been through that process before, if that makes sense?
Well, the simplest way is usually in like a 3-sentence explanation. I'll just say, was Usain Bolt's coach the world's fastest man before Usain Bolt? And if the answer is no, then there's your answer. Totally. The tangible response that someone has to be the thing they're coaching in is redundant we've seen in a multitude of sports. Like, I've seen top tier elite status NRL players go into coaching, they suck because they don't have the methodology, they don't have the autonomous environments, they don't have the understanding of people behavior, not even just physiology, but psychology of manipulating and handling people, but also the expertise. Like, when you think about someone who's coached or been playing halfback for 25 years, I know firsthand, I played halfback and hooker for 20 odd years. Yes, you need to know everyone else's positions, but how you coach a halfback and how you get the best out of a halfback is very different to how you get the best out of a front row or a winger or a fullback, and how you get them all to gel as a team. Your job as halfback is to be on the field commanding orders. Like, that's it. Your job is to bark orders, tell people where you want them to be, look down the field, see where the play to end up. You don't need to be coaching. You need to be instructing and directing. You're the director of the play. That's your job. So for me, I've seen halfbacks go to coaching, and they're good at coaching other halfbacks, terrible at coaching a team. So you might get, you know, Dorian might be successful at coaching other Dorian-like personalities. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I see that a lot when we see, you know, very, very stringent, monotonous, routine coaches. You know, they might share the results of 3 or 4 of their best athletes, but that's because they're identical to them. But if you've got 100 clients starting out and you've only got 10 clients who make prep and finish the show and actually get there, it's only 10% complete rate. Like, they don't show you those numbers. Yep. But when it comes to Dalton, he understands the perception of, like, he can't put himself in the shoes of, like, I've dieted down to 3%, 4% body fat. Well, fair enough. Great. He doesn't need to. He understands that the physiological adaptations, he understands the psychological adaptations, he understands to be empathetic and understand that life's going to happen, understands that, well, he understands more nutritional science and behavioral science than anyone I've met. And in a way that he can articulate and get it across, not in an arrogant way, but in a way that's understandable. Like, to me, and I've probably said it to you 100 times too, Einstein's always said, you know, you can't, I say always said, Einstein said, if you can't explain something to an 8-year-old, you don't understand it.
It's my favorite quote.
to Dalton, he could explain this shit to a 3-year-old. And to me, that's like the difference between those sorts of coaches. Like, yeah, great, you can go train. Like, I would probably get trained by Dorian. Like, hands down, no question. I would let him punish me. But to be coached by Dorian,
fair enough.
Probably not. And that's not like for someone to come on and attack this like episode later on or something. I love Dorian. I love Dorian's gritty intensity. I love his peak sets and that sort of thing where he only counts one heavy working set and pyramid up. But we've moved past that. Like, that's great intensity block. That's a great intensity session. But yeah, me and Dalton have 5-10-year plans already. And that's going to change. Like, I don't believe in setting 10-year programs, but to have a plan in place for the next 5 years that we're executing almost to the T. At the start of each block, we write down these goals and we write these things out, and they happen. And you're like, that's fucking, we watched this happen. Yep. It's like, who else is doing that? Who else is looking so far down the track as well as right now?
Yep.
And that's where I think the results have come from for me is like, yeah, I can't give 100% every single session. I think I've written this a few times in a few different posts. If I only have the ability to give 80%, I'll give 100% of that 80%.
80%, yeah, for sure. You'll go as hard as you can while you can.
Exactly. And so, an example of this is like exam block last week. I was horrible. I had a sinus infection. I was lack of sleep. I was consistently just focusing on study and my exams. I was stressing. My appetite was gone. he saw that, noticed that, and rather than being like, shut the hell up, get all these meals and you have to do this, we tailored in a deload. We tailored in some rest. It was more so just get the calories in you can eat, and we'll look at improving, the next few weeks after that and come out of the block better. And that way I was still maintaining as much muscle mass as possible. We weren't going backwards. My lifts were still there, but it wasn't like, this is what the program says you have to do it, otherwise you're a failure. It was like, right, this goalpost is here. The hurdle's in the way. How can we move the hurdle or get over the hurdle and get closer to the goalpost? And so that to me is like the huge difference between a coach and a dictator.
Yep.
And that's why I'll always choose Dalton.
And with with Dalton being, I guess, not less experienced, because he's not less experienced with bodybuilding. He's obviously coached a couple of bodybuilders, both male and female. How much input, I guess, do you have with your training? Let's say your posing stuff, because I know your posing is probably going to be a lot more advanced than Dalton's, for example. So I imagine he's the eye that sees the shape and can see what needs to be sort of worked on and where and when and that sort of 100%. Stuff. But I guess how much input do you have with your own training and your own plans, your own nutrition? Because it's not like you're dumb, like you're quite versed in, nutrition in terms of training and in terms of supplements. So it's like, what's that balance like?
I let him take the reins, but at the same time, it's, I would say, like a partnership in conversation. When I go through periods and I'll say, especially coming out of this tendinopathy, I'm identifying exercises that aren't flaring my knees or causing inflammation. It's like, all right, so in the next block, because I want, if I'm getting this responsive growth from low stimulus and low weight, I've got some exercise I've found without pain, without instigating problems that we can execute, that I can start to load up. So he's going to take that and go, right, that's going to the program next. So it's a mixture of like me identifying places I want to improve and the things that I think will better my shape, and him having the know-how and the knowledge to tailor that in and fit that in a sort of mutual discussion, rather than just being like, all right, let's jack up your waist, let's jack up your chest, let's jack up. Do I need more chest or do I need more rounder shoulders? Do I need more arms or do I need a thicker back? Like, we have that conversation all the time as each phase progresses. We have an outline, and then it's like, all right, I got to the end of the block last time. It's like, all right, where do you still feel you want to focus? And it's my legs. It's going to be my legs for a long time. It's going to be my legs. Yeah, they're coming up, but I want disgustingly dominant legs to match the rest of my upper body.
Nick Walker legs.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where our next program will go. And I think he knows that as well. Like in his head, he's like, yeah, I'd probably say that, but it's including me in the conversation. So when it gets to like week 6, I'm like, fuck, I'm bored. And he's like, no, you chose it. We chose it for a reason. Get it done. Yeah. And so that way it's like,
I guess my next question would be then in terms of like exercise selection and that sort of stuff. Obviously, you do have some injuries, and Dalton's obviously well versed with rehabilitation and stuff like that as well. What's your, I guess, input in terms of exercise selection? So it's like, what muscles now you need to build, and like I imagine he puts the plan together. Does he give you like variety and exercise selection? Does he sort of just give you the movement pattern and you say, okay, cool, I'll pick the exercise based on the gym that I'm in? Because I know you train at, you were training at one gym, but then sometimes you train at a different one, depending on, I guess, your schedule.
Yeah.
Like, is it, movement pattern based and then you pick the exercise? Is it, you just have the set exercise it gives you and that's just what you do, no questions asked? Like, what is it in that aspect?
No, so sort of a bit of the set of the two. So we'll look at exercise selection in terms of like, right, what's the key for me is stimulus versus fatigue versus pain. So with my lower back and now the knee is coming along. It's not going to be a chronic injury. It's how much stimulus I get in from the exercise, how quickly does it fatigue me, and then how much does it flare up my back. So I like to push the cuff in, like how close can I get to my back breaking again before I have to sort of like taper back, because the more intensity I can push, the greater load I can push, obviously the better stimulus, but I am restrained to that inflammation, that response, that pain. And there have been weeks where it's like, all right, I push a little bit too far, but we can track that. I can see that and go, all right, 25 working sets, a bit too much for this muscle. And so we'll tailor the total set volume and we'll look at that and go, all right, this block I want to focus, Dalton will say, I want to focus 25 to 30 working sets on your quads. These are the main exercises I'm thinking. What does the gym have? What do you think? How does this pain feel when you're doing RDLs, when you're doing B-stance RDLs, when you're doing trap bar deadlifts? How much back gets involved in that? Is that your form or is it your pain? And from there, we can see how it affects the rest of my program. So is doing heavy deadlifts worth it if it means that I'm so fatigued and tired from the rest of my block that the lifts aren't as good? And so it's like, do I really need deadlifts? Am I a powerlifter or am I just doing deadlifts? And so we can sort of play around with that and look at and go, yeah, you got good lifts on the deadlift, but by the end of the session, you sort of dropped off, and it sort of took you a little bit longer. So that takes away from study time. That takes away from eating food.
Yeah, so it affects other aspects of your life by being fatigued. Right?
Exactly. And so it's like, all right, is that fatigue worth the ratio of pain and volume? It's like, I could probably do other exercises.